You know every time we speak, it's no apologies. This is Wicklow Healthcare Advisory, presenting industry insiders, brought by Bill Murray. He help you in a real hurry. From ownership to healthcare, he an advocate, teaching you how to buy and sell practices. From CPAs to attorneys, all guests, here to help you with your goals. You never know who's on next. This is Wicklow Healthcare Advisory. Let's go!
Welcome, everyone, to our second episode of Wicklow Healthcare Advisory presenting Industry Insiders. These are the great professionals that help service veterinarians, medical doctors, and dentists in many different ways. But these are people and professionals that you need to know to make sure you're building the right team, making great decisions, and when you're thinking about either buying, selling, growing, expanding, or building that empire or exiting that empire, introducing you to people that can really help you along the way. So today's Industry Insider doesn't need an introduction. I thought many of you know this name. Many of you have met this person. He goes to a lot of trade shows. He's everywhere, it seems, especially in the veterinary marketplace. But today's guest is Peter Tanella from Mandelbaum Barrett. Pete, welcome. So
Bill,
great to have you.
Yeah,
absolutely,
thanks. It's great being here, Bill. Thank you for having me.
I hope you're not billing me for this hour, but hey, we're going to get through it as quickly as possible. So thank you so much.
I'm glad we get the
for being
lawyer
here.
joke right out of the gate. That's
right, and it'll be the only one, I promise. It'll be the only one, I promise.
All good.
So Pete, you're an attorney. You've been with Mandelbaum Barrett for a while now. I've had a great relationship with your firm and with you specifically over the years. Talk to me about what you do for the veterinary industry and your history with Mandelbaum Barrett.
Sure. Thanks again for having me on, Bill. It's great seeing you.
You as well.
So I've been a lawyer for 25 years and, in the vet space for the past 15 years. And, you think back when it first started, like so many of us in the veterinary space, my history started in the dental space. My firm is very involved in the dental space many years ago. And we saw an opportunity in the veterinary space with a lot of the industry service providers who we had great relationships with in the dental space to segue over into that market. And like some other colleagues in both spaces, we did juggle for a while doing both.
Sure.
But then, the practice grew so much in the veterinary space. Now, over this past 15 years, I spend all my time here, with developing relationships with people like yourself and other professionals who service the industry, which I love, and it couldn't have gone any better. I'm so glad I made the move over, and it's been great ever since we've gotten involved in the space.
It's awesome, and you've seen a tremendous amount of change over the last 15 years. And your firm, you do a lot of transactional work. So when I think about what you do to help the industry and to help veterinarians along, is when someone has a legal need, especially a transactional legal need, they're selling their business, they're buying a business. You guys really specialize in that. Is that the case?
Yes. We like to say we have to take a 360-degree approach because of. We have the platform of services that we're able to bring to the industry. Now, I'm the tip of the spear. I chair the firm's national practice. Everything comes through me, all these different issues, buying, selling, merging, startups, different type of exit strategies, and just general corporate counseling. Because of the platform that we have here and the different experts we have here at our firm, we can handle all those different types of matters throughout the country, which it's really cool and really interesting because at any given day, I could be talking to a client in Alaska, I could be talking to a client in Hawaii, and somebody here right here in New Jersey with different type of legal issues. So that's really been interesting, and it's been a lot of fun. Talking about change, you're right. When I first got in the industry, there was mainly practices looking to sell to other private veterinarians. And then obviously you had the corporate boom that took over the last 4 or 5 years. And now we're seeing a whole nother transition all over again today. But it's really been interesting in that regard.
That's great. Like I didn't realize, like outside of the transactional work that you do, because obviously that's where I've met you. I met you while I was at Bank of America. We were always looking for good attorneys to help close transactions and work with our clients. But you are a full service firm. So if they've got issues with, HR, they need handbooks, they need things other than just transactional work, Mandelbaum does all that work as well. That was I lose sight of that sometimes, just being so focused on transactional things.
Right. I think that makes us pretty unique in the full service platform that we have. Yes, our bread and butter is startups, acquisitions, sales, associate buy-ins, but it's all the other work that we do in addition to that. It's really, we've had a growing practice. Trademarks, estate planning, regulatory counseling, and a lot of employment counseling.
Sure.
And we go into every state, which is kind of unique too. Again, that's what makes it so interesting on a day-to-day basis.
You're based in New Jersey, correct?
Yes.
Got it. And you are a New Jersey guy through and through. I heard a rumor that you might have been mayor of your town at one point. Is that a true statement? Is that?
It is a true statement. A long time ago. Yeah. But then I knew it was time to move on. After 20 years of doing that, it's unlike some of our politicians, it was time for me to move on.
Fair enough. That's great. That's great. We won't get into politics on this cast today, but that's great. So
yeah.
So you are national. So I mean, I've worked a lot with you in the Northeast, but you have clients all over the country as a national law firm.
We do. Which is great because you're working with a lot of times you're working with the same industry professionals, whether it's lenders, consultant like yourself, accountants. Sure. We can pivot into different states where you say, oh, we can't do it there. Yes, we can, and we can help out the client.
Started in veterinary, you've been growing the team now. So it was just kind of you and probably a couple legal assistants back 15 years ago. Now you have a full team. So how many lawyers are in your veterinary specific group today?
So we have, I'm going to say we have about 10 attorneys within the group, including some two paraprofessionals, but that's within the immediate team. Again, bring the resources of the law firm. We have, construction counsel, employment counsel, tax counsel, ERISA counsel, all who have a significant amount of experience in vet med now because of the work they've done for the firm's clients. So you can bring it. I like to say you kind of bring them in like a surgeon. So just like a specialist, they come in for that piece of work, and then they can come back out, pop back out again. But we can keep it here because we know the client. So it makes for stronger, longer-term relationships.
Great. So it's not just like I talk about transactional things. You guys aren't transactional. They can choose your firm and work with your firm for anything that they do. That's great. That's great.
Right.
I will switch the gear though and focus a little bit on transactional work because obviously that's what Wicklow Healthcare Advisory. When we work with attorneys, it's typically either on the buyer side or the seller side. So transactionally, I've worked with your firm. You represent both sellers and buyers, and both on private transactions, veterinarian to veterinarian, and then also on the corporate side. Is that still true?
Yes. Like I said earlier, we spent early on. It was mainly just on the private side, and then there was that change in the industry where people said, "I would never sell to corporate," and then all of a sudden, a lot of the thought process changed. And then obviously there was a lot of activity in those corporate sales in 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019. Unlike I think some of other colleagues in the industry, legal colleagues who are just spending most of their time on corporate sales. Yeah, at any given time, we had 25 to 30 corporate sales going on. I have a deal board here in my office, and we were doing that, but we were still always doing all the other work as well. So as the corporate industry market kind of slowed in the last year, now we may have 5 or 7 corporate transactions. I'd like to use the word the pendulum. The pendulum was kind of shifted back over to the private industry where you have a lot of sellers looking to sell to an associate or some other veterinarian, and not always looking right to corporate now. And we're doing a lot of that work again. And there's a lot more startups now, more than I've seen, in years before. So that work has been constant.
Totally. We're seeing that because there was so much M&A activity in the corporate space, a lot of the associates that were hopeful practice owners in 21, 22, 23, they couldn't find a practice to buy. They felt like there wasn't anything out there. Whether that was true or not, is here nor there, but they ended up going the startup route. So you work on some startups as well, and some lease negotiations and helping someone get into practice that route as well.
Right. We do actually do a lot of startup work because, you're forming a business, you're going to negotiate the lease, and then if you're going to build out that space, we have expertise in negotiating the construction documents and dealing with the architect, the contract manager thing. So we spend a lot of time in the startup market again, all over the country. You're seeing a lot more of that activity where people, clients are just saying, I'm going to go start up my own practice.
Totally. That's great. The other question I had for you regarding transactional work is, you see a lot. You guys do a lot of work on both sides of the fence, private and corporate. What's the biggest change you've seen in 2024 on maybe like deal structures in corporate or something that you've seen that you were like, oh, this is new this year versus in years past?
Right. So, with the corporate deals, they're still there, right? Everybody said, oh, there's no more, everything's dried up. No, there's still a lot of corporate activity. I think, the timing of those deals, meaning they take a lot longer, back, when the corporate deals were hot and heavy, you can close one of those deals, 60 days. They, get an LOI and you're closing 60 days because they wanted to move the deal along so quickly. Right. Now, those deals can take several months. There's a lot more diligence going on. And I like to tell our clients who come to us, said, you just got to be prepared and be patient. It's a longer process. Just be patient and be prepared. Some of them are working all day long and they get frustrated by all the requests for documents, not only by the buyer, but then by us as their lawyer. So I kind of want to prepare them ahead of time, be focused on the end game. So it's timing and then the complexity of the deals. Back 23, 22, 21, you had a lot of cash deals. You still have some of them, but the majority, almost all of them, the majority of them are some type of joint venture structure. There's some type of earn-out component. There's notes involved. I think the complexity, they were always there, but back then it was so competitive. Each one of them saying, I'll give you all cash. Now, all of them are kind of aligned saying, we're not just going to do an all cash deal. The seller's got to be prepared that you're going to stick around for a while. Whether it's a 3 or 5 years, you're going to be sticking around in order to maximize that sale.
Sure. I was in a presentation a few months ago, and I was sitting in the back with a group of veterinarians while one of the corporate acquirers was doing their presentation. They kept on saying JV, 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 JV. And I stopped and looked at one of the veterinarians next to me. I'm like, do you think that also means junior varsity? Like,
right.
So there's, like you said, the complexity of deals has gotten very different, especially that combo between cash and then post-sale equity or whatever type of structure is being offered to that veterinarian.
Right. The simplest form, Bill, JV, you're going to be partnering with the buyer. You're going to be partnering they're betting on, you're really betting on yourself. Hey, I got a great practice here. I want to get as much cash up front, and then I want to get the most favorable terms so I can exit as quickly as possible with as much money as possible. And then, as you know, not only money and the structure, I think what's something that's really interesting here in this industry, which I didn't have the experience in other industries that I'm in, is the culture. And I was really shocked when I came in here and started working with veterinarians, and then especially as it's grown and working with veterinarians who are selling to a corporate buyer. Yes, everybody wants money, right? That's human nature. But finding a transition partner, how is the culture going to be for my team? Here, it's almost just as important as how much money that you're going to get. It's how are they going to treat my staff? What is it going to look like for them? It was really eye-opening. I mean, now it's obviously, and you're seeing it too with your clients who say you may bring a buyer to them and said, okay, they're going to give me X amount of dollars, but what's the history? What other people who have sold to them? I want to have my clients call up their other sellers and say, why don't you have a call with one of our clients who sold with them 2 years ago? See what the experience has been for them and their staff, so they're comfortable.
Right. There's been so much noise, I think, in the marketplace on the veterinarian side about oh, I sold and I didn't have a good experience, or I sold and I had a great experience. They are asking a lot more questions about, well, what does life look like post-sale working for this company? And I'm very honest with our sellers, especially a seller who's been 25, 30, 40 years in ownership. You know, it's tough to go from I own my own practice to now I work for somebody else. And that somebody else isn't necessarily another veterinarian, right? So I try to set up the right expectation of like, hey, this is going to feel very different. It's going to be very uncomfortable. And it's not just uncomfortable for you. It's also going to be a little uncomfortable for your staff. And you're still there. It's not like you're dropping the keys and you're leaving. You're seeing your staff the same way you saw them every single day for the last 30 years. And they're going to be looking at you to lead through this change. And a lot of veterinarians, like that, I think that's where the culture fit comes in. And you have to, I think you said it great. It's not just, it can't just be about the money all the time. Money is going to be a huge factor in the sale of your business. You're creating, especially in some of these larger transactions, you're creating generational wealth. Right. Okay, great. We get the generational wealth aspect, but also if you have to stick around for 3 or 5 years, you also want to make sure you're making the choice with the right partner for you. Most of them are very good, but they might not be the right fit for that specific individual or that type of practice. So making sure you have that good culture fit makes a lot of sense. That's great insight. Really great insight.
You talk about, in order to be a full service advisor. I'm just, we're Mandelbaum Barrett. Barry Mandelbaum, God bless him, still here, 86 years old. He's a real, you know him, you've met him, real Renaissance man.
Post on LinkedIn. Yeah, I mean, I saw him post on LinkedIn. I was like, I got to get my game up. That's right.
I love the fact, I've learned so much from him. And one of the simplest pieces of advice he gave me years ago, as a young lawyer, we are in the people business. You can't forget that. You're a lawyer, but you're in the people business. You're dealing with people. And as an advisor, I love what you said. Setting the expectation early on with what's this deal going to look like, and explaining to them from the beginning to the end, so they and you're holding your hand through the process. You're getting to it. There are going to be times that you're right. They're going to be uncomfortable, but that's just part of the deal. But if you're setting the expectation and communicating to them as their advisor, your goal is to get them to a closing, a successful closing. Right. And it's not always a straight road. Unfortunately, there's going to be some bumps in it.
Totally. Yeah, I always talk to clients and potential clients about getting you to the right landing spot. Right. It's yes, we want you to close. Yes, we want this transaction to go through, but also getting you right to the right landing spot, whether it's a private buyer or a corporate buyer, making sure that there's a good fit and good synergy there. That's great. Let's shift gears because it was great insight into the startup market kind of built over the last several years, and it's good to hear that you guys are creating new opportunities for veterinarians through the startup market. But you've also mentioned, I thought that you're also seeing a shift in the pendulum to private practices going veterinarian to veterinarian again. Talk a little bit about some of the nuances in that type of a transaction where it's not going corporate. Maybe it's a single or 2 doctor practice that's selling to a third party veterinarian coming in.
Yeah, and I guess it's going to depend on whether or not they're selling to an associate that's within the practice or it's somebody who's coming outside. And I think again, expectations. The practice obviously has got to get the value. I find sometimes with the expectation, and that's why it's so important to get a practice valuation so everybody understands and get a meeting of the minds. Because I think once the parties agree or have within a ballpark of what the practice is valued, everything else will come into place with the right advisor, talking about what that transition is going to look like, what the expectations are of the seller or buyer. Is the seller going to stay for a significant period of time? How often? How much does the seller want to work for? I talked to a client yesterday. She just kept saying, "I'm ready. I'm ready." She's saying I'm old, which she's not, but I'm old. I want to slow down, which is a lie. You're ready. They built up, an enterprise. They're looking to pass the torch. They still want to stay, but they're ready to pass it on. Not everybody is like that. Some want to stay longer, want to be more involved. So just kind of understanding what the expectations are, and then getting the parties to align. Getting on the phone with counsel for the buyer or the seller and saying, okay, looking forward to working with you. this is what my client's expectations are. What are yours? Let's get aligned before we start exchanging documents, so we can, get our clients to, the end result that they want.
Fantastic. So it's good that you're seeing that pendulum swing, and it does. I think the theme of today's discussion has really been about setting expectations, making sure we have clear guidance going forward, and making sure you've got two parties that are willing to connect and discuss and have a dialogue around how the transaction should go.
Yeah.
Do you find that when you're in these deals and you've got an attorney on the other side that is, willing to sit down and have that kind of kickoff call with you, that those transactions go a lot smoother?
Definitely.
Yeah.
The great thing about this industry is there are probably, I'm going to say maybe 5 other firms I'm thinking off the top of my head that are involved, specifically like us, and we got great relationships with all of them. So I love the fact when where somebody's on the other side, I can pick up the phone. Obviously, I'm going to be an advocate for my client, and I expect them to be an advocate. But you're not asking for you're not asking for unreasonable conditions or terms. And that's where the benefit of getting an advisor like yourself, like the accountant, the lender, the attorney who's in this space and understands the space, you understand, again, what the expectations are. And it makes the deal, no matter what you're doing, associate buy-in, a sale, an acquisition, it goes much smoother when you have everybody, all the parties that are aligned, including the clients.
That's great. And then you hit on something that I want to make sure our listeners get, is that the attorney is part of that, one of the major spokes in the wheel of your team, right? And you said it, in an acquisition or selling of a business, you need a good sell-side advisor or buy-side advisor. You need a really good accounting firm or an accountant that's in that deal and knows what's going on with the financials. And then you really need a good attorney that understands the industry and understands transactional work in those buy and sell agreements and all the other documents that come along with that type of a sale.
Definitely.
Who else is involved in? Yeah. Who else is involved? Like, what other professionals do you think should be part of that team surrounding a veterinarian who's selling their practice? Is there anyone else out there that you think needs to be involved?
No, I think I can't. I think that's the team that you want, and it's whenever I do a presentation, one of the first slides I have and one of the last slides I have is your team of advisors. And it may sound a little cheesy, but it is based upon yours and mine experience. We realize how valuable it is to have everybody aligned, because when you have one of those advisors, I don't want to pick on the accounting profession, but let's just say you have an accountant who's involved in a deal who's not in the space, and they're giving out advice. A lot of times it may work for another business, but it's not working here, and you've seen it. So you want to have someone who's familiar with a veterinary practice and understands how it operates and what the expectations are, because then everybody's in alignment, and there's not a question as to, what's the value worth, or you should be asking for this, or you should be asking for that.
Yeah. I also think that you should have this team in place. It shouldn't be 30 days before you're thinking about selling. They should be engaging with you and firms like you to have an ongoing relationship. So that way, when they are ready to sell, they're prepared. Do you find that like transactions work better the earlier that you're in and have a relationship with the client?
Definitely, because you want to know. So, and they come to us in all shapes, sizes, and forms. Sometimes I'll get an LOI, a letter of intent that's already been executed, negotiated, and it comes to me, and the deal terms are kind of cemented, even though it's non-binding. It's there. It's a lot. I find more productive when a practice owner is thinking about selling, and you get involved, and maybe they don't engage us right away, but they call us, and we're always having a conversation. And when they're I always tell them, when you're ready, we are here. And if you got a question between now and then, please reach out. But they start asking, what should I do? And then I'm asking, well, who is your sell-side advisor? Do you have one? Who is your accountant? Do you have one? Those are the two critical professionals I want to know who they have. And then if they're selling to a private veterinarian, well, who is he or she? Who's their lender? Who are they working with? The client I spoke with yesterday, I think I know that buyer was actually going to, and you could appreciate this more than anybody. The buyer was going to the community bank, and my client's telling me, oh, he's getting denied for financing. I said, well, yeah, that community bank, that's really, it's like a square peg in a round hole. Why don't we find them someone who understands veterinary medicine and these types of transactions? I think they'll get a better response.
Absolutely. Community banks are great at being community banks. They are not great at financing goodwill, right?
Yeah,
Goodwill is the
right.
air that comes along with these deals, and that's usually where they fumble, and they're trying to stick you into a product that doesn't work. So that's great. So, Pete, give us, what's a piece of advice or two that you would give to, let's go with a seller that's considering the sale of their business. They're not, maybe it's a potential corporate acquirer, or maybe it's selling to an associate. Give some advice to those individuals that are listening today that are starting to have that conversation with themselves about slowing down and potentially exiting ownership.
I think we touched on it a little bit already, Bill, with that practice valuation. That is, I think, one of the most critical parts of the overall process. Understanding, what the value of your practice, and understanding expectations. Because if you had that valuation and there's things in that valuation that are revealed that you can correct, more efficiencies that you can make, so you're prepared. And not just doing it 30 days before you're going to sell. Do it well in advance. As an industry expert, they say 5 years before you're thinking about exiting, you should have a valuation, but that always doesn't happen. But have the valuation done, one, and then two, your key employees, your associates at that practice. Look at them. Who are they? What's their expectation? Are there agreements in place? Over the last, let's say, I don't know, 6 months, 8 months, I'm getting a lot of questions. Oh, restricted covenants, non-competes, are they enforceable? Yes, they are, if they're reasonable. Now, I'm not a proponent one way or the other.
Sure.
I'm Switzerland. You're coming to me with advice, and I'm trying to give you the advice that you need. But in order to get the full value of your practice, you want to look at that and set the expectation, because it's like going into I like to say, I always give an analogy. You're going into a car dealership. Oh, I want that Cadillac. Okay, I'm going to pay that money for that Cadillac. Well, if one of those wheels falls off the Cadillac, it's not as worth as much. So, if one of your associates doesn't come along with the transaction, that practice you're not going to get the same value. So making sure your key associates, whether they have contracts in place, or I'm always asking, do you have associates? Yes, I have two. Okay. Are they under contract? No, they're not. But okay, well, will they be willing to go along with this deal? Because why even spend the time and money if you're going to look to sell your practice and it's just going to be you, and you can't get your associate to go along with the transaction?
You're going to be writing, if you don't have an idea as to what your associates are thinking about ownership, about their stickiness to the practice, about moving into a corporate model, if you don't have an idea as to what they're thinking about those things, then you need to start having those conversations well before, because it's just going to end up costing you the
Right.
owner money, right? They're writing big checks right before closing, because you're right. Many of the corporations, rightfully so, are out there saying this deal has this value as long as the practice looks like exactly like this post-closing.
Right.
And if one of those associates doesn't come along for the ride, that absolutely damages value. And then you're sitting at the closing table writing a very large check to your associates to make them come along.
Right. And you may write a check to them anyway, because again, going back to
Totally.
what I said, culturally, so many of almost all of our clients over the years, whatever their selling price has been, they want to share, they want to share in that reward. So there is some type of retention bonus that they're giving to an associate. Not giving, that associate's earned
it,
that. Yeah. So it goes along with it. One other thing too, Bill, I see a lot of talking about expectations. When do you want to sell? You have to know in this market, again, depending if let's corporate side, like we said, you're going to be there at a minimum 3 years, probably 3 to 5 years. You're successful if you basically you have a large enough practice and you pushed all of the production to your associates, and you've kind of pulled back on that. You're not a revenue generator. You are more of a medical director. You may be successful in getting a 2-year transition period, possibly. 1 year, probably unlikely. But there's an expectation. So if you're getting to a point, I think I want to sell, just remember, if you're going to be going corporate, you're going to be sticking around for a while, and you need to think about that in your head. Again, planning accordingly.
That's right. When you think about your 5-year plan, you should also be thinking about the time you're going to be with that corporation post-sale, right? Add that into your timeline. So if you're thinking your 5 years, you might be wanting to sell literally now.
Right.
If you're 10 years, then you should be thinking about, all right, in 3 to 4 years from now, let's have this done. And I really appreciated your advice about the valuation. I think, for a fair market valuation, understanding the road, it gives you like a roadmap, right? If you can get a valuation done 10 years or 5 years or 7 years before you're ready to sell, then you can work on the things that might be a little out of whack to get them more profitable, to grow your business, to grow your earnings. That is what that valuation does. It sets the bar for, this is what your practice looks like today, this is what you should expect to get for it today, and here are some of the things that you can work on to make it even more valuable when you are ready to sell. If you do that the same year you're trying to sell, you don't have the time or bandwidth to make those changes. Right. If you get it done 7 or 10 years before, you got plenty of time to make those changes. So I thought that was great advice, and appreciated that. So Pete, obviously it's Wicklow Healthcare Advisory. For the listeners that don't know, the name Wicklow came from my retirement story. I would love to retire to an area of Ireland called Wicklow County. I've spent a lot of time there. My family's been there. My wife and I spent a lot of time over there, and that's the goal, right? My retirement dream is a place in Wicklow for an extended period of time. So I ask all our guests, so Pete, what's your Wicklow? What's your retirement dream?
Listen, Bill, I think I said I'm 54 years old. I have 3 daughters, 2 in college. I have another one going to college next year. So I have 3 in college. So I really don't focus on the Wicklow right now. So, but in all seriousness, one of my older brothers, I went to a wedding in Rhode Island over Labor Day weekend. He married his last daughter just got married. And,
oh, wow.
I'm sitting there and I'm listening to him talk to all the guests there. He's about 10 years older than me. And he's kind of winding down now in his career. I'm looking at him like, I'm looking at his daughter, his whole family around. That's my Wicklow, to see with my family, at that point in time. You can slow down maybe with work. You still can, I love the relationships I have here. And again, which is really unique here, traveling and, you don't go to these conferences and, you're dragging, because I'm looking forward to seeing my friends like you and other colleagues in the industry. But I do want to spend more time with my family, wherever that may be. I'm in Jersey, hopefully somewhere warmer. But my Wicklow is really just really enjoying my family, our kids, and maybe slowing down at some point in time.
That's good. Well, that's not going to happen anytime soon, I don't think. Your Wicklow, you have a second Wicklow. It's to get out of college payments, right? That's the other Wicklow. Well, you get to the other side of that.
Listen, Bill, you're right behind me, buddy. So that Ireland Wicklow, you got a ways to go to get there.
I had someone, so to the listeners, I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. So when I talk about retirement, people laugh at me. They're like, you're never going to retire. You're going to be doing this for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So listen, Pete, it was a great conversation today. I really enjoyed it. I think our listeners got a lot of great information. I don't give, to our listeners, I don't give many endorsements, but the best endorsement I can give to Pete and his firm is that when I have a question, whether it be a legal question, an industry question, when I'm in a deal and things are popping left and right that I need to get some guidance on, Pete is one of the first people that I will pick up the phone and call. So for me personally, Pete is one of the best in the industry. He is a true industry insider, and it's just a great relationship to have. So those of you that don't have an attorney or thinking about exiting, reach out to Pete Tanella and Mandelbaum Barrett Law Firm. Their contact information will be on the final slide here in a few seconds. But Pete, again, just a great conversation today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your insanely busy day on a Friday, no less. I mean, that was my fault. But really appreciated the time, and what a great conversation today.
Bill, thanks for having me on. It's great seeing you. I love the conversation. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete. We'll see you out there, sir.
All right. Take care.
Every time we speak, it's no apologies. This is Wicklow Healthcare Advisory. Presenting industry insiders, brought by Bill Murray. He help you in a real hurry. From ownership to healthcare, he an advocate. Teaching you how to buy and sell practices. From CPAs to attorneys, all guests here to help you with your goals. You never know who's on next. This is Wicklow Healthcare Advisory.